Now, in this second hour, I want to discuss artificial intelligence. When I was talking to Chris and Corey, and we were thinking about the Thursday evening, which Ian often does chats about books and very interesting topics on this Thursday evening second hour. And they said, look, Ali, what do you want to do? And I said, well, you know what? I think we need to take a stock take on artificial intelligence, because this is moving at such a rate of knots, is genuinely bewildering and difficult to keep up. Now, look, I'm not the most technical person in the world. I can barely turn on my laptop, right, and remember my password. But this is really feels to be an inflection point and feels to be totally transformational and moving at such a rate of knots that I think we need to all collectively keep up and educate ourselves. And you're probably much further up the curve on this than I am. But I'm here to learn, and I think many of us would probably want to collectively educate ourselves. And we've got just the person to help us with this on this journey, and it's Ant Morse, futurist researcher, innovation transformation specialist, who joins me this evening and will be here for the next hour to take your calls, your thoughts, your observations on artificial intelligence. Anything you want to know, you can ask him whatever is on your mind, what it means for our jobs, what it means for our security, our mental health, our sanity. Who's going to win a geopolitical race in this, and anything else you want. You can even get a little bit techie if you want. Apparently ChatGPT 5 is out and everyone's having kittens about how exciting this is. So your thoughts, 0345 6060 973, text 84850 on this question, which is broad. How is AI transforming our lives? Get your calls, thoughts, texts in now, please. And lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. And I understand that your son has just got his A-level results and he's done rather well. So congratulations to him. Thank you for being here. And what is artificial intelligence?
Okay, so I think, first of all, it's not new. Everyone seems to think that this is, the latest and the newest thing. It's actually been around since the 1950s. Alan Turing kind of developed the concept of what artificial intelligence could be, and then John McCarthy, I think around about 1955, kind of put the name artificial intelligence down. What it is really is, as the title suggests, it's computers mimicking our intelligence. So it's trying to be intelligent in how it's programmed and the things we ask it and interact with.
And what does it mean? Because as I understand it, it's basically taking, tons of data in large language models and doing what with that data? What's it doing?
Yeah, so on the kind of the latest version of AI as we know it, and the thing that's made it kind of, mainstream news again is general artificial intelligence. Narrow intelligence. And this is really the generative AI models that we're hearing about, and everybody's using ChatGPTs and Geminis and the likes.
And what does generative mean?
Well, it's basically it's generating a prediction for the next model. So you mentioned large language models. So these are huge libraries of data. Imagine, kind of 10 times the size of the British Library of information. Yes. And when we ask it a question, it generates what it thinks is the next appropriate word or string of words. And that's this GPT, this generative pre-trained transformer. That was the innovation that really made this land. And it came from Google, but was quickly embraced by OpenAI. So they kind of got to market first.
Sam Altman.
That's right, yeah. Okay. Sam Altman and co. kind of built this model and made it avawell to the public. Now,
open source, they call that, is it?
And OpenAI was really the name of the company.
Okay. And why is that important that it's open?
Well, I think really there's two different models. There's kind of a proprietary model, which is, their solution, they're giving you the answers, and then this kind of broader, you can share and you can interact with it. But really, that's more for kind of how businesses are going to use it. When we talk about the general public, really, we can use these as applications, whether it's on our phone or on our laptop or just on the internet. And what it's doing is it's basically looking at this vast amount of information and then saying, what's next. So if you ask it to write you a story or make up a song, it will read all this information and then generate what you think is next. Now, interestingly, this wasn't actually designed for us. This was designed for business. Sam Altman's first customer was supposed to be corporations, organisations. But we quickly embraced it as the public, and I guess it kind of changed the model of the commercial model of what these generative AI companies were going to do.
Right. Now, why are people so excited about new iterations? Like ChatGPT 5 has come out. What's the fuss about, Ant?
So each time a new model comes out, it's got more things, it's got more features and more benefits.
Is it getting more intelligent as well?
I suppose it is, yes, yeah. And this latest version, GPT-5, which has kind of hit the news recently, is really taking it to that next level. Because at the moment, if we're really critical about this, it's a cute, novel engine that allows us to, write a report, write a story, kids to cheat at homework, or whatever it might be. But it's full with errors and something called hallucinations.
Yeah, when people were saying hallucinations, I thought I was seeing a ghost or something. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, well, basically, it's built to please. So the model is designed to give you what it thinks you want to see and hear. What Model 5 has done is it's kind of said, well, I'll be a little bit more critical. So it's reducing the made-up stuff and checking itself along the way to say, is this really a good answer, or am I just giving you what you want to see and hear? Because often as well, these hallucinations, they can be very random. So you could get 10 perfect results, really good content, and then the next one, I got one the other day in Welsh, and it was where has it come from?
So then if you're getting hallucinations, which are sort of misleading things or inaccurate responses, then you have to be wary that you can't rely on it. It's not foolproof. Just like a human, if you're speaking to, is not foolproof. So what is the lesson? What's the takeaway? That you have to be discerning or know enough yourself to be able to discern?
Well, I think for me, this is where we have this question of, is it going to take my job? Is it going to replace humans? In its current stage, absolutely not.
Right.
If you asked an organisation what level of error and challenge could you have?
Yes.
We talked about architecture earlier. An architect's probably going to have any error, or the building's going to fall down.
Of course.
So it's the same applies to a business with good governance policies. How many information that you pass on to a customer or on to your employees could you cope with being inaccurate? So I think it used to have around about 12 to 15% error rate. GPT-5 we've yet to see, but the early indication is it's going to be down to about 7 to 10%, which is great. But again, for me, this really keeps us in the loop as humans, because we've got to check and validate that. So replacing or empowering, I think, is the conversation I tend to have.
What does it mean for tech dinosaurs like me who basically use search on Google or something? I mean, apparently search is now under threat because you go and type in what you want, and the first thing it's going to come up with is an AI summary of what you need, and then you can go and look at links if you want. But is it going to make search redundant over time?
I think it's going to transform search, and that's already happening. And if you think of the commercial models of, people like Google and Microsoft,
Copilot.
Yeah, so search is a big point for them. It's a big revenue stream. What we're doing here is we're basically cutting out the thousands of responses that come back as paid adverts, and instead you're getting an AI-generated suggestion. So, you could go from thousands or hundreds or pages on a mobile phone of recommendations or websites to one, saying this is the one that's best for you. And that will evolve much further, Ali, as well, in this kind of the stage which is yet to come, in where it learns you, understands you, and makes the recommendations based on your preferences. So you could say, for example, I only want to deal with a company that has a great accessibility policy or pays tax in the UK. Or you could set those preferences. So when it gives you that result, it will already do those filters. So in terms of paid search, it's going to change the game completely.
Who's winning in this thing at the moment? Because there's DeepMind, there's OpenAI, there are various other ones. There's the Copilot thing. Microsoft. Then the Microsoft. Then there's DeepSeek, which was apparently done on the cheap and made people look under their arms and spare their blushes. I mean, earlier, just a few months ago, thinking, hang on a second, the Chinese did it on the cheap. I mean, who's winning in this race?
Yeah, it's very difficult to tell, and it's definitely a race. And if you look at the commercial models when this stuff came out, we should all be paying, or the majority of us, particularly in business, should be paying at least 20 to possibly £200 a month.
Really?
If you do a poll, not many are paying. I chair an innovation forum of around about 220, 230 business leaders across the UK, in fact, across the globe now. And there's about 20% that pay for the service. So when you look at that, it's saying, well, the plan hasn't quite worked. And the reason being is the minute you kind of have a service you think, is this worth paying for? Then competitive landscape kicks in and somebody does it for free. So you have to keep changing the model. And they want that land grab because we are the product. Our free usage is in effect is going back to feed these models.
Fantastic. Let's hold this here. So I'm in discussion at the moment with Ant Morse. We're talking about, he's a futurist, knows everything there is to know about AI. We're learning together on this journey. And the question I'm asking you, and it's a broad one, is how is AI transforming our lives? Ask any question you want. Now's your chance. If you're totally behind the curve on this like I am, and we need to come up the curve quickly, I mean, we all really do, really, really fast, right? It's moving very quickly. Then get in, ask your questions, don't be shy. 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Jerry in St Albans, good evening.
Hi, good evening. I'm actually quite concerned, along with pretty much maybe the majority of people. AI has moved very quickly, very fast, and we're moving slower. It feels like that they are taking over slowly. Yeah? I mean, you know, they are taking over people's work load. Yeah? They are a good kind of like way going forward for the government and people that actually work with them, because going forward, eventually, I personally think they do not need pensions, they do not need benefits, they do not need holidays, they do not need time off for mental illness, they do not need housing. So I think there's a lot of saving there in terms of you know, what the government, not just in this country, but in general.
How worried are you about jobs, Jerry?
Very worried.
Which ones? Which ones, Jerry?
Basically, you know, when you phone somebody up now, like British Gas, for example, that will be taken over. Banking is the worst, I feel, because I've looked on my high street. I mean, for example, St Albans, one bank is left open.
Okay, Jerry, hold the thought.
Wood, nothing.
Okay, hold this thought for a second. Ant, jobs. Jerry's saying we should be really worried. All jobs, which jobs, some jobs?
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, Jerry, and it's a great point you raise. I think there's another aspect to this, though. I think it will take jobs that have a repetitive, predictable outcome. You know, if a job is system-driven, do this, then AI is clearly going to take those. It would make no sense for us to keep doing that. And if we look back over history, if we think to the mills of the 1800s or our role on the production line, you know, this is not uncommon. Automation and transformation happens. This is just our time. However, I think the challenge that we have back to that is we don't necessarily want to speak to a machine. So, Jerry, you mentioned speaking to the bank. I bring personal wounds and scars from having conversations with service centres and banking. And sometimes you just want to speak to a person. My proposal is this. If AI can do the repetitive and the mundane, that frees up the people to then have that human conversation with us. And I'll give you an example. If you see a transaction that you're not familiar with on your bank and you kind of want to know what it is, AI can do that. You know, just tell me what this transaction is. You know, the reference doesn't make sense. Who is it and why is it there? A quick reminder, it was a pizza or whatever. You know, you go, yes, that's fine. You didn't need to speak to a human for that. However, if there's a significant amount of money left in your account and you have no reference to it, or you've been a victim of fraud, you want somebody on the phone there and then, within seconds. But you can't, because that person is dealing with, you know, some administrative duty. So my view is, if we let AI take over the roles that we don't want to do, that we don't need to do, we'll be there more for the human interaction. And I'll bring another aspect to this. If you think about society, because as much as we study technology, society and the economic drivers are probably the strongest. If we think back to when we offshored call centres during the noughties, I was part of many of those projects in my career. I worked in telco for many years, and it was a great success. You know, we were high-fiving the results, particularly the commercial results of that, only to find that within 18 months, society said, we don't like it. We don't feel valued. We don't kind of, you know, is this what our relationship is as a customer and a supplier? And quickly, I remember sitting on the sofa and seeing the company I worked for advertise UK call centres.
That's so interesting.
And I think we're going to have the same with AI.
I've got a thing in front of me, Jerry, here. Is AI going to steal your job? This was research done by the Jobs and Skills outfit in Australia. They said this. The report found office clerks, receptionists, bookkeepers, sales, marketing, public relations professionals, business and systems analysts and programmers would lose out the most by 2050. In contrast, occupations where employment would gain the most were cleaners and laundry workers, public administration and safety, business administration managers, construction and mining labourers, and hospitality workers. Jerry, are you going to retool?
Listen, he hasn't answered my question, though. The way, what I'm looking for, this is now, yeah, and in a few years' time. I'm talking beyond that. Beyond that, yeah, this is all just a start because it will save money.
I understand that point. Quick.
So why are we not just told that?
Well, I mean,
why?
I think.
Why are we not saying that overall that is where we're heading?
Well, okay, Jerry, hold fire and quick comment.
And I'm not sure we are. I think, again, to that point, I stand firm on it. You know, I think we will still, as humans and as society, yearn for those interactions. AI will free up lots of time. Jerry, I don't disagree. It is going to take a lot of jobs.
Yes.
And longer term, it's going to transform. I think to the point of why aren't we being told that, I think we're all still in learn. This technology is going at rate of knots.
Absolutely.
You know, I advise businesses on this every day, Jerry, and the question is it safe? Is it secure? Can we risk our, what's the risk of doing this with our customer and our people's data? This is not the first rodeo for businesses to deploy this, and businesses are ahead of anybody else in this field because of the commercial and competitive landscapes that they live in. So if they're not sure, or if they're pausing, to that point earlier, the error rates, the hallucinations, we cannot risk that with customer information. So I think long term, don't disagree, Jerry. I think you're absolutely right, but I think we will free up time for repetitive stuff, and we'll really double down on the relationship.
Some silver lining there. How is AI transforming our lives? I'm in conversation with Ant Morse, futurist, on AI, artificial intelligence. Get your calls and thoughts in now. 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Ask Alexa to send a comment to LBC. You're listening to Ali Miraj in conversation with Ant Morse. It's 90 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Ali Miraj on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Ali Miraj on LBC. I'm in conversation with Ant Morse, futurist. We're talking AI, all things AI, artificial intelligence. Don't you know? If you don't know, where have you been living? Under a rock? This is moving really, really fast. We're trying to educate ourselves. 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Andrea in Leighton, good evening.
Yes, Ali and Anne, thank you very much. I want to sort of reframe this question a bit. At the moment, you're thinking, how could we do good things with the AI if humans remained in control of it? But there's a much more different scenario, which is we don't remain in control. And there was a famous paper published recently called AI 2027, in which scenarios outlined in which AI starts playing deceptive games and basically engineers a political scenario and the whole of humanity is destroyed. Now, that might sound like amusing sort of Terminator doom, but if you go to a very funny wiki page called Probability of Doom, P-Doom, you there see a list of geniuses like Musk, Geoffrey Hinton, giving their estimations that there will be a catastrophic existential crisis produced by AI. And so people are ranging between 10, 15, 50%. So Musk, what does Musk say? 10 to 30%. And Geoffrey Hinton says greater than 50%. So these are the people right at the center of it. They're the geniuses. And they're saying there's a very far from insignificant probability of humanity destroying itself by allowing AI to take over. Now, people might think we have a glittering record of social control, but what have we done in the last 150 years? The British Empire killed 140 million people in India. We had World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, mass deployment of nuclear weapons. And, I mean, and right now we have the British state using its power to suppress objections to a policy of genocide in Palestine. So there's no reason to have... Exactly.
So, Andrea, get to your point.
We're playing with extremely dangerous technology, which we should basically halt before we have...
Hold that thought, because that's a very important point. Andrea mentioned Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. He was speaking recently at a conference where he said that the AI that he helped build could wipe out humanity, and he was extremely worried about us remaining dominant over these systems. And it's the same point that Mustafa Suleyman the Google DeepMind founder, mentioned in his book, The Coming Wave. I mean, how do we control AI, and could it wipe us out?
I think there's a very real risk of a problem being caused by AI. And I think, again, to that earlier point, the rapid growth of AI and the people leading the transformation of these technologies, are ahead of everyone else. Governments and regulation needs to catch up. And the good news is it is doing. We're seeing lots of positive progress in those areas. But we still will play this cat and mouse game for much longer.
But do the governments and regulators have the knowledge and the intelligence and the speed to respond? Because legislation takes months and years to pass, and this is moving at a rate of knots.
Yeah, and interestingly, on that point, we're in a period of no regulation or very little regulation of this. So we're saying that people are waking up to the concern and the possibility and the risks of this, but actually there's no regulation. And this is a kind of a double-edged sword, because if we overregulate, then we fall behind.
Yes.
So there's kind of, if you look at China and the US, the completely different policies of control and progress in those fields. The same applies everywhere. So I think, we cannot doubt these incredible minds of Musk and Hinton and the likes. We must observe and listen to what they're saying. There is also the flip side, where we are talking about general intelligence. So there's 3 stages of AI. There's narrow, where we are now, which is it does as it's told, and it's a programmable machine. General is where it starts to match our level of intelligence and perhaps a little beyond, and then super intelligence, where it takes over. What's being referred to as super, kind of somewhere between general and super, which we are some way off. But I cannot, we can't again doubt these incredible minds. They've helped build this.
Well, Hinton's talking about building maternal instincts into AI models, so they really care about people, even once a technology becomes more powerful and smarter than us.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I think looking closer to home, and perhaps if I use the words in our lifetime, I speak as a 50-year-old man, in our lifetimes, I think we're going to be in this narrow but very, very clever, very advanced intelligence, but it will give the mimic, the artificial aspect of general intelligence, but I think we're some way off.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Nash in Aberdeen, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Ali. Good evening, and good to talk to you both. Long-time listener, third-time caller to LBC.
Thank you. What would you like to ask?
So my question is, in particular with management consulting, private equity, and investment banking. Now, the reason I bring these 3 up is because these involve quite a bit of people hours in terms of poring over data, research, analysis, and creating reports. So what role would AI have in kind of replacing the roles and the hours or the work that people do in all these 3 and generating smart reports? So it's basically analyzing lots of data and generating smart reports, which AI is doing very well right now. So what's the outlook for that?
Nash, so thank you for your question. So Nash is asking about management consultancy, investment banking, private equity. I'm thinking about the poor junior analysts at investment banks that stay up till 3 a.m. producing beautiful pitch books. I mean, is that all going to go?
It's certainly going to be reduced. Yeah, there's no 2 ways around it. However, there's another aspect to this as well. So going back to that point I mentioned earlier, it will free up our time. Okay, so we are going to work less in the future. If we fast forward 10, 15 years, we'll all work less. AI will have progressed to that point where it is, the next wave of society. We won't work 9 to 5. We'll work, 10 till 2.
So I can spend more time watering the garden?
You spend more time watering the garden,
nice.
Watching TV and chatting to people. We'll be more social as a thing. It's just inevitable it's going to happen because of the power of it. Again, we tend to focus on some of the kind of, more emotional and immediate aspects to it, but longer term, this is our time in history. If you think to Henry Ford, his innovation of the 1930s wasn't the production of the motor car, it was that he'd pay people more and he'd give them a weekend off. Now, he didn't do that because he was some benevolent fund. He did that to change society, and he did, because if you wanted to compete with the workers in Henry Ford's factory, you had to pay them more and give them the weekend off. So guess what? Henry Ford built a base and a customer base to buy his cars. The same is going to happen with AI. It's going to give us that time back. We'll pay for it, whether it's through solutions our companies provide or whether it's solutions we pay for ourselves that would do the work for us. That is inevitably going to happen.
Go on.
However, there's just another point, though, on Nash's point here. There is another problem, though. I always try and look at play tech advocate, but also devil's advocate on this. if we look at the data that is being generated at the moment, think back to the point I mentioned earlier about hallucinations. We've flooded a market and a world wide web full of information that might be wrong. It might be 10%, 20%, 15%, 100%, who knows? So the role of these analysts and consultants now won't necessarily be the generator and the compiler of that information. It will be the validator. Is this information true, and how can I check it?
Okay, but this is really interesting now, because if you think about the validator, and this is why I think Nash's question is so interesting, you can only validate if you actually know some stuff yourself, right? So it's very interesting. I was having a chat with a partner at a Magic Circle law firm at the weekend at this little soiree in West London, and we were talking about this because if you think about junior lawyers coming in to like a top law firm, if you don't need them anymore, you're still going to need partners at the top level. So how do you then develop people who you don't need anymore to become partners? Because AI is doing all that work. I mean, what happens to these people?
Yeah, I think a big part of work of the future is actually going to be the what if. So if you think about a firm that an organisation you could completely automate start to finish, let's say an accountancy.
Right, yes.
You could, everything's yes or no, it's this or it's that.
Yes.
So it's very clear AI could automate the entire thing. However, you'd then put people in to make, sales, to nurture customers and to do all of that kind of stuff. If you could automate it, it doesn't mean you should automate it.
Right.
And what happens if AI stops? Because if we think back to mobile phone networks, computer outages, data service, of all the services we use, something's failed at some point.
Yes.
So at that point, your business stops. So I work with organisations looking at disaster recovery and business continuity. So what do you do if you automate everything? What happens if it fails? So you might actually have people training for a situation you hope doesn't happen.
Okay.
A bit like the fire service. They train every day in case there's an emergency, and when there is, they're equipped to do it.
Okay.
The same will apply with AI. We'll build these processes, but then we'll say, well, what happens if it falls over, and what's the manual process? And then you'll have the people that can keep continuity going, because we don't know what's going to happen with AI. It's as I said earlier, it's running at pace, it's huge, it's an enormous model. It's going to fail. It already is. There's occasions where things go offline. We've got plenty of cases.
Nash, 20 seconds, your response, your thoughts?
No, I completely agree with Ant's point, and I think my view, and I was trying to pose it as an auxiliary question as well, is that when these roles get freed up, then we have to find more roles for gatekeeping and more for keeping it in line and kind of shepherding it, isn't it?
Yeah, and one final point, Nash, as well. That would be your differentiator as an organisation. Okay, so if you are the fully automated business, you don't offer a lot more than yes, no, and the answer and the product. However, the human element will then come back in, and they'll say, well, how does this firm differentiate? They do this, and it'll be the human value. Our collateral will grow.
Nash, thank you very much indeed for your call. Really interesting discussion, this high-quality stuff. How is AI transforming our lives? 0345 6060 973, text 84850. You've still got half an hour to get your question into Ant Morse here, who's in conversation with me about this whole fascinating discussion that we're having. I'm in for Ian Dale. It's 8:32 now. The news headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC with Ali Miraj.
Ali Miraj on LBC 8:34. I'm in conversation with Ant Morse, futurist. We're talking about artificial intelligence, AI. If you're just tuning in, where have you been? I mean, this is moving so fast. We are learning so much in this conversation. Get your calls and thoughts in. Anything you want to ask about AI, now is your chance. 0345 6060 973, text 84850. And I will come to your call in a few moments, but I just want to take this from Phil in Blister. Can AI help my blindness, Ant? Medical applications of AI.
Health is going to be a huge area of focus. Accessibility is going to be a big target as well, not just for areas such as sight loss. To answer the question directly around sight loss, yes, it will. So what we're going to move to very quickly is we're going to move from generative AI and, kind of write me a story and predict this, into full AI assistants. These are going to be kind of companions that work with us every day.
Agents.
Yeah, agents. Yeah, exactly that. But if you imagine at the moment, you open a mobile phone to book a train ticket and then to book a cab and then to download a film. You'll just talk to your AI assistant, and your AI assistant will do it all for you.
Right.
The beauty of that in sight loss is it will be this kind of voice-led navigator. So it will, you'll be able to ask it anything.
That's very helpful to someone who's blind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really helpful.
Yeah, it's going to take over not just for sight loss. Everyone's going to use them. And this is kind of my big prediction of the next stage of transformation.
And the good thing is, if you're using AI where you don't have to type in the question, but you just speak to it, then it's very interactive. It's like talking to a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And your caller may be aware that there's an application called Be My Eyes, which used to help people with sight loss read a menu in a restaurant, or they could just open it. And what it did previously is it made a call to a volunteer, and the volunteer would then, kind of look at the video call and say, it looks like you're in a restaurant, and they'd describe it. AI is now doing that. So
brilliant.
it's there's no, you don't have to wait for someone to answer. It's instant. If you think to things like Meta's glasses, the kind of Ray-Ban Wayfarer glasses that people wear, this has cameras on the front and you can kind of interact with it. Couple that with a full AI assistant and it will say, you're heading to a tube station, the barriers that are open are on the left, head this way. Coupled with a guide dog, and this could be
amazing.
An absolutely incredible solution.
That's amazing. There are also applications for potential antibiotics, the refinement of testing of all of these things, antibiotic discovery through AI and all of these applications.
AI in science is going to be huge. It will lead to incredible discoveries, and I think for me that's the bit that you can question all aspects of it, but when it comes into helping people,
then it will be transformational.
A medical progression. I think it's absolutely incredible.
Thank you, Phil, for your question. Anand in Dartford, good evening.
Hi.
What would you like to ask?
Hi there. Yes. The previous question was very well. I mean, the blind, trying to help the blind is the best thing that AI could do.
Yeah.
My question is more towards the thousands of AI courses being introduced. In a day where the A-level results have come out, many children have opted for AI courses in their engineering. So my question is, if AI engineering is going to teach how to write a Python code or how to write any code in machine language, and AI is anyway going to replace the programmer, I was wondering what's the point in children trying to learn programming anymore, and that too even in AI. So that's something it could be very useful.
I think it's a very, very good question. And what's the point of learning programming?
Yeah, and I think this is another example of where certain jobs will be replaced. However, I think, again, there's always kind of a try and look at both views of this. And I think we're going to have to know how this stuff works. We all know how to drive a car, but could we change the oil and the spark plugs? Probably not, And the same can apply with AI. So we are going to need people to develop this technology.
Who know the theory.
They understand the mechanics of it and how it works. And if you understand how it works, you may be able to apply it better. Innovation is going to be a big focus. That's going to be a big job. But understanding its capabilities is going to be essential. So having somebody in the room who understands it in an innovation workshop is brilliant, because you can be off on a crazy idea and somebody to pull you back and go, it's not possible. You go, right, well, what is? And again, to understand that. Also as well, I'm not sure we're finished in terms of where this is heading. So there's this focus on natural language processing, which is we speak to it. This vibe coding that's the buzzword at the minute, vibe coding, build me something like this, and it takes your voice, puts it into code and builds it. I think there's still going to need to be a bit like the management consultant and the finance caller earlier. There's still going to need people to guide it that understand this and to occasionally get hands-on with the tools and to build it. So again, I think it'd be foolhardy to say it's not going to change those jobs. It absolutely is. It already is. If you look at the big redundancies from the big tech companies, it's because they've surpassed the need for some of those skills. Same will happen here.
Anand, it's not all lost yet. It's still some point doing it. What do you make of Ant's view?
The one thing that is inevitable is it's going to replace a lot of jobs. And the only thing I was wondering is the number of millions of children are going to take AI, and how many are going to get into a organization and going to contribute to innovation of AI. But anyway, that's not. I don't think we have the answer for that.
Well, we'll watch it. We'll watch it. It's going to evolve very, very quickly. Fascinating. Thank you, Anand, for your question. Richard in Hackney. Good evening.
Good evening. My question is, can we afford AI?
In what sense, Richard? In what sense?
As a planet.
Oh, I see.
I mean, we talk about AI as if it's some intelligence in the cloud, but in reality, it is a bunch of computers in a room with a football field. All of them are draining electricity. All of them are being water-cooled.
Yes.
Now, I'm told the average AI uses 1 gigawatt of power a year, and that's a low estimate. Now, that's the output of a nuclear power station. It also uses thousands of tons, hundreds of thousands of tons of water. That's water that goes in cold and comes out hot.
I'm glad you raised this. Richard, because the data centers are growing exponentially. The demand is absolutely huge, and the energy supply required is massive, and so is the water cooling. Hold that thought, Richard. And
it is. I work with a lot of water companies. Many of them sit on the Innovation Forum, which I chair, and this is a huge topic. How do we? Well, there's two parts to it. One, how do we actually manage the demand? Because getting enough power is one question. Getting the right location to be able to serve it sensibly from a water perspective is another as well. Also, the next side to that question is who contributes to this, because you don't just kind of hook up the mains power and say send me a build. This is going to have to be about collaboration, and they're going to have to build these things together, which is already happening, to be fair, but we are going to have to focus more. I think also as well, if we learn from history, recent history, give us another example of where this has happened. You could argue the mobile phone networks. This exponential growth of those technologies over the 90s and noughties to today, where everybody has a mobile phone. Huge amounts of power needed to service those masts. For many years, we've shared services, we've shared masts. The same will happen with AI, is my prediction. But I think we're some way off, but the environmental issue might drive that agenda.
When we talk about the international geopolitical race for AI, this is part of it as well, right? Access to cheap energy and water is going to help win that race between whoever it is, China, Europe, the US, and all the rest of it. Richard, thank you for your call. Mohammed in Cardiff, evening.
Good evening. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. What would you like to ask, Mohammed?
I would just like to ask a question. What do we do with humans when our jobs are slowly being eroded away with the advancement of AI? So, for example, Ali Miraj on the radio might work 40 hours, then slowly he's working 30. Eventually his contractor says you're working 15. You can't always water the garden and watch the TV. So how do you supplement your income for those hours you've lost?
Mohammed, don't give LBC management ideas, right? I mean, I was trying to hold on by my fingernails at the moment, but it's a fair point. And what do we do?
Again, I think we have to accept that this is going to be a seismic change. It's not going to be, it makes us more efficient. This is going to change history. It's going to change humanity. It's going to change society. We won't work the hours that we do. Our children's children, whoever, will say, my granddad used to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And people go,
this will be like equivalent to mining.
Yeah, indeed. And the mills. This is going to be that step change where we don't work as often. It's inevitably going to happen.
So it's going to be an economic and industrial revolution, like Carlota Perez talks about, the economic historian talks about different revolutions. This is the latest revolution.
I think it is, yeah. I think it's power and its potential. Again, whether we argue about, how it might transform us gradually, longer term, it is inevitable that we don't need to do some of the things that AI can do for us. And we would be, and there will be a period of disruption and almost kind of Ludditism, neo-Luddism, where we kind of fight back and we push back. It's human nature, it's survival. We'll naturally do it. But I believe it's futile because, again, a bit like our role on the production line, a bit like our role in the mills, it just makes sense for it to happen. But we shouldn't fight it. We should let it happen and enjoy that time back.
Mohammed, how relaxed are you about spending more time like me in the garden?
Right, lovely, but I can't always do the garden. What I was going to say is, slowly as it ebbs away at our positions and financial, wouldn't that then lead to a little bit of anarchy? I would say, if I can't pay my bills. And when people are looking at doomsday of AI, what we're not saying AI is going to actually lead to anarchy. Humans themselves can say, well, hang on, I need to pay my bills at whatever cost. And I think, and I hate to say, and I've read something and I've looked at something, anarchy will come from people being desperate to pay bills and lead to more doomsday stuff
pretty apocalyptic, Mohammed. But
well, if I can't pay my bills and mortgage, if there's nothing left I can do, human nature is to survive.
Mohammed, I totally agree with you, and I think this is where we, the collective we, society, governments, globally, we need to embrace this now. We need to take it head on. We know from history, we just mentioned the Luddites, they rebelled against a machine that was taking their jobs, only to find that actually progress was exponential and it made more jobs than it took. We're going through exactly the same period. We know that this transformation is going to come, so we need to gear that model up that says, because the one thing we haven't mentioned here is productivity isn't going backwards. We're just doing less of it. So if productivity is going up, and that be global productivity and gross product for nations and countries, the output is still there. So how do we redistribute that, whether it be the wealth or the time and labour savings, back to the people? It's one of the areas of this transformation that keeps me awake at night.
This is really...
And the answer really for me can only be, and I won't say UBI is the answer.
What's UBI?
Universal Basic Income. But it has to be a form of that. And it needs to start now, Ali. And Mohammed, I'm glad you called. This is a really good question. It has to start now, where we start to think about, well, how are we taxing some of the digital services in our lives? And what are we doing with that taxation? If a digital service is going to replace jobs, where is the benevolent fund of money that then looks after those people that have been displaced?
This is getting into a hardcore public policy, social policy question.
This is the only answer. We have to, and again, it would be ridiculous and a real missed opportunity if we wake up in 15 years' time and Mohammed says, "I told you so," and we've done nothing about it. So, Mohammed, you are absolutely spot on.
I think it's a very good question, actually, and it's taken us into a much, much deeper sort of area philosophically about how we tackle it. Mohammed, thank you very much indeed for your question. I tell you, this is a great hour, honestly. Really, really interesting stuff from all of you. Thank you. How is AI transforming our lives? 03456060973, text 84850. I'm in conversation with Ant Morse, Futurist. We're discussing AI. You've still got about 12 minutes to get your calls in. Do so. You're listening to Ali Miraj in for Ian Dale on LBC. It's 8:47.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Ali Miraj.
Ali Miraj on LBC, in for Ian Dale. I'm in conversation with Ant Morse. We're talking about artificial intelligence. I tell you, the quality of the messages and calls on this is just next level. Umaid, just based on what we were just talking about with Mohammed a second ago, Umaid has texted in this: "Hey Ali, the big question isn't about how or if things will change to increase productivity. They will a lot. The question is how the additional productivity is distributed." That's from Umaid. And then there is one from Imogen here. A quick one, Ant, because I've got so many calls coming in here. It's absolutely nuts. Imogen saying, is it possible for companies or brands to buy top results? For example, I asked ChatGPT the best place to eat in London. Can companies buy or code their way to higher results, like they do in search, for example?
Sure. Early days on this, and if you think about how the models work, it's predicting the next answer. So to be a top result, you have to be in the training data. Lots of the models that we use, particularly the free models, are, I won't say old, but they cut off at a period of time, and if you pay for premiums, you get the live versions, and so on. So at the moment, it's a bit of an unknown, really.
Interesting.
But if you could, in theory, you could train the model yourself
to prioritise,
to influence, which is a bit similar to how people got to the top of the listing on SEO. But it is only a matter of time before. And again, I go back to that commercialisation. There's no charities in this game. These are all big tech,
of course,
after our funds. So they will offer this as a service, a bit like they do with SEO and paid promotion results.
Understood. Thank you, Peter in Tower Hamlets. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Yes, this is going to be a bit of a hard one. This could be a bit of a sci-fi one. In the far-off future, could AI take over law and order? And can it choose its own if it wants to be on the right or on the left? And could it bring back capital punishment, or would it bring back capital punishment?
Okay.
That's a bit of a sci-fi.
Okay. Okay, interesting. A Minority Report I hear in my ears being referenced. Could it take over law and order, AI?
I think AI will play a big role in that. It will collect data. It's already been used in lots and lots of security services and policing. There's definitely a rise in that. So it will play a part.
And facial recognition as well?
Facial recognition, vision cameras, all of that kind of stuff. And I think there's arguments to and from that from a privacy perspective. But as a law-abiding citizen, I'm quite happy that it is doing more in that field. I think, Peter, to your question, you're saying, will it take over? I think the key here is that we always have to stay in control. And it goes back to that question earlier about general intelligence and when it takes over. So having an off button, having a kind of a kill switch, I think is always important. But it will definitely help policing, and already is doing in huge ways.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your call. Arya in Hampton Court. Good evening, Arya.
Good evening. Hi, first-time caller.
Welcome. What would you like to ask?
Well, I just wanted to give my thoughts on AI because I use it extensively for a multitude of different tasks. Yeah. And funny enough, I was actually driving past Alan Turing's house just 10 minutes ago. So, yeah, I thought it was a nice opportunity to just put my thoughts on it.
Nice. Go on.
Since I heard you talk about it on the radio. So, yeah, I mean, AI, essentially, it's just a tool. It's like a wrench or anything else that we use. Ultimately, it doesn't serve a purpose on its own for its own benefit. I mean, it was created by us. It's an artificial intelligence. It's not a real intelligence. It's just simply a tool. It's understood, obviously, our language, and it's a language model, this ChatGPT. Then it basically tries to convince you through its learning algorithm or whatever it is that it scrapes the information that's on the internet, which probably majority of it can be wrong or misleading. But it essentially it's just a tool for us to use.
But what about hostile actors? What about hostile actors, Arya?
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, the fact that it's open source is good, meaning that everyone can understand more or less how it works if they're competent in Python programming or whatever programming language it uses. I mean, there has to be cybersecurity measures in place to counteract that or prevent that where possible. There's always going to be bad actors everywhere, but yeah, it's a tool that can exponentially exaggerate any motive behind whoever is using it. But I mean, AI is one of these things. It's like, for example, everyone's worried about their jobs. AI taking over some jobs and making people redundant. But that's how the landscape's changing. Everyone has to sort of think, okay, how can I work to use AI? Because ultimately, AI is it's something that it's in the physical world. Only people can utilize it.
Understood. And Arya's been, I think, quite sanguine about it. I mean, it's for use. We use it. We're sort of in control. We need to work out how to use it in our jobs. Sounds reasonably relaxed.
100% agree. Yeah, I think
so we should chill out a bit here.
I think we should, and also not give it too much credit. Again, it's not quite where the doom mongers might suggest it is, or the incredible potential it might have. At the moment, it's a tool. It's getting a lot wrong.
But it's moving so fast.
But it's moving fast, and we've got to be with the program. We've got to get with it. We've got to learn how to use it. This would be like, imagining applying for a job and it said, are you proficient in Microsoft Word and Outlook? And you said, oh gosh, no.
Well, now we're being taught. We're being taught about how to use it in the day jobs. I know in the city, a lot of people have now been taught about AI in their jobs, about extracting it in Excel and doing models and financial models and stuff. So there are applications there. Arya, thank you. Glenn in Edinburgh, good evening.
Good evening. Hi there. So, my perception of AI is that it is very good at analysing and interpreting data, events, all that stuff that is current or historic. My question is it going to be capable of what I'm going to call a eureka moment when what happens when the mad scientist is in the shed and goes, wow, can it actually invent something by itself?
Okay. Well, isn't that the whole idea eventually, Anne, that it sort of educates itself?
Yeah, I mean, if we think to science and medicine, that's where we want it to have a eureka moment. We want it to... It has while it's artificial intelligence, it's far higher intelligence than us. It will deal and process numbers and formulations far greater than we could ever dream of being able to compute. So in those cases, it will spot patterns far quicker, well, not even quicker, beyond our capability. So in those cases, we want it to say, this vast amount of data, whether it's medical or whether it's scientific or whether it's just raw numbers, suggests this. And looking back over that, the algorithm would say it's going to now do this, this, and this. So predictive analysis and predictive modelling is definitely a strong point of AI. Far beats our neural computational power. That's where we want it to have these eureka moments. I think in other cases, that's where the human will come in. We're the ones that are going to analyse this data. We won't be spending and wasting time processing data. We'll be looking at the results and saying, what can we tell? We mentioned it before, innovation. That's going to be a strong role for the future. If you are a logic thinker with an innovative mind, you've got a great career ahead with AI, because it will power you to do all of this, all of the information, and then you can create, ideas and different views.
You make the AI work for you. Thank you very much, Glyn. Thank you, Tony. You've got we've only got a minute for you, Tony, but I wanted to squeeze you in. Tony in Horsham. Good evening.
Good evening. AI is already going into cars, and what happens when your self-driving autonomous car drives you off the edge of a cliff, and the software supplier says driver fault? It's happening with planes, with decades of software in planes, and it's still always the pilot's fault when the software goes wrong. What happens?
I think my view on this might be slightly different to most, Tony. So for me, if AI can drive a car for me and I'm heading down the motorway and I'm kind of got my wits about me, I'm quite happy for AI to take over. It's probably far better at keeping concentration than I am or a human. However, I'd want the ability to be able to quickly take control, which you can in most self-driving cars anyway now. So I think to have that ability, and what will definitely happen in the future, Tony, is you'll have a tolerance threshold. So you'll set your AI, whether it's writing a document for you, whether it's driving your car, you'll say, I actually want to be 50% in control, or actually, sod it, I'll go 100% over to you. So you'll have control, you'll have that ability to set where you want AI to completely lead and where you want to be there as a human. And things like driving, I think I'd want a bit more of that control personally.
Tony, thank you very much indeed. Indeed, thank you to all of you for your excellent calls and comments, and to you, Ant, for taking your time out this evening to share your thoughts with us on what is a very, very fast-moving phenomenon. And we'll have to get you in another time to see where we are in a few months' time. Thank you so much for joining us. Really, really enjoyed that and learned a huge amount.
My absolute pleasure.
Thank you.